And welcome back to the Pleasant Street Podcast with your host, Taylor Nissi. Taylor, good to be with you again. How are you?
Doing well. Great to see you, Bill.
It's good to see you, too. I'm very excited about your guest today. So without further ado, let me turn this over to you because I'm anxious to hear what he has to say.
Great. Yeah, well, today, Andrew Martin's joining us. He's a biologist and the founder of Second Prime, a coaching service that takes a proactive, data-driven approach to helping entrepreneurs mitigate health risks, maximize human performance, and extend longevity. And what's interesting about Andrew is he battled some debilitating autoimmune issues that impacted his relationships in his business. And he spent 5 years navigating the gaps in traditional medicine and ultimately resolving his own health issues with a targeted nutrition, supplementation, and biohacking. And that journey revealed the deficiencies of modern medicine for healthy, high-performing individuals seeking optimization. And it really inspired him to transition his business into a health optimization coaching for entrepreneurs. So with that, Andrew, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's dive into it by starting kind of with your background, because I think that's really a great place to start and kind of sets up where we are. So, talk to us a little bit about kind of, what happened and, how that autoimmune challenge was kind of challenging your life. And then, walk us through how you sort of cracked the code there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you introduced me. So you did a good job of that. So my background educationally is in biochemistry and biology. And so after I graduated, I was working in a lab and I was essentially a lab rat. I was in a fume hood for 8 hours a day, changing the colors of caps on tubes. And it was just not very fulfilling at all. And so I ended up transitioning into one-to-one coaching services after that. During that time, and by one-to-one coaching services, it was at that time training, nutrition, basic supplementation for clients who wanted to lose weight and just feel healthier, right? And so there wasn't more of the advanced stuff that we do now. At the time, I had also come out with the autoimmune condition that you mentioned before. It is still to this day, nobody knows what it actually was. There was no diagnosis, but I went from being very healthy, fit, and active to gaining a bunch of weight, being in pain on a day-to-day basis. I would get these big red spots on my skin that would essentially make whatever muscle that they showed up on, like I couldn't use it. They just rendered me useless. So they'd come up with my calves a lot, and I wouldn't be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. I wouldn't be able to do like basic things. And so it obviously impacted my life in a pretty significant way. I, had a hard time like meeting my clients, and it crushed my energy. I remember laying on the couch, and I was just newly engaged, and my wife wanted to go on a hike with our dog, and I was just like, it was a Sunday afternoon, it was beautiful out, and all I wanted to do was just like lay there and do nothing, right? And at that point, I had seen every like specialist you can imagine: a rheumatologist, cardiologist. At one point, they thought I had a stroke. I mean, it was just everything, and so I had spent 20 grand seeing all these specialists, and everyone just kept telling me everything's fine, everything's normal, nothing's wrong with you. And that obviously wasn't the case at all. And so I sort of eventually just got frustrated and decided to take it into my own hands. And, I am lucky in that I found someone who could go a lot deeper with me from a testing and assessment perspective, and found a whole host of issues that nobody was able to figure out with me. Right. I mean, I even had a biopsy on one of the things, on one of the like red spots. And they were just like, oh, it's this thing called erythema nodosum, and we don't know what causes it. And so you just need to take an antibiotic every day for the rest of your life. And so I took antibiotics for 3 years straight, daily. And eventually, I just got sick of it. And I found someone to help me and go deeper. And that's really what launched my trajectory in terms of doing this more deep assessment that we do with our clients now, to understand more about their physiology and biology and address root cause issues that they're experiencing, and help them optimize their health. Because the truth is, I was healthier than most people. And when traditional medicine looked at me, they said, you look better than they do, so we don't know what to do. And when you are someone who expects to be a high performing capacity, and you're lower than your expectations, which are a lot of the people listening to this now sometimes, it can be very frustrating and feel like, there's nobody on your team. And so luckily I found a guy who was able to help me, and we found some basically I had a liver infection and a viral infection that over the course of 6 months we eliminated with targeted supplementation and various nutrition strategies that were unique to me. And I haven't had issues since. And I'm off
Wow.
antibiotics, all the treatments, and yeah, it massively changed my life. And I just realized that more people need that sort of thing. And
Mhm.
most of the time, it's not like a severe health issue like I was experiencing. Most of the time, it's low energy or having a more difficult time than expected losing weight or lack of cognitive focus, right, and productivity.
Mhm.
And so, like, those are a lot of things that we're addressing with our clients.
Very cool. Well, not cool that you had to go through that, but interesting to hear that journey. And it's funny you say that. I have another mentor who talks about a similar experience where he had major knee issues, and they kept telling him just to wear a brace and to take this medicine. But then he started doing other things like Pilates and some other things to strengthen the other muscles around it and fix the whole thing. But the whole
Mhm.
time the doctors were like, you just need to get surgery, you need to do this, and it
Yeah,
was totally missing the mark. So
yeah,
it sounds like a similar challenge, but yours was more at the biological level versus his.
yeah.
So, question there, you made this jump from the lab to coaching. So, I assume you were always interested in fitness and in coaching. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your background there, your interest there, and
Yeah.
why, maybe why you're a coach today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was an athlete growing up. So, like, I was always, and honestly, my favorite part of sports was the training. I just loved
Mhm.
training. I was the weirdo who would, like, love the 6 a.m. football camps. And yeah, so I was always super into just physically exerting myself and challenging myself, I think. And so I was always pretty fit up until the point where I wasn't because I got sick. But I was always pretty fit. And so that kind of at the time in the biotech company, there was the gym that was on the floor below it. And so
Mhm.
in my off time and before and after, I was coaching classes for them. And like I just hated my job so much. Honestly, like me transitioning to coaching wasn't because like I thought that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was because I just hated my job so much
Mhm.
that I couldn't stand like being there for another year or another second, I should say. And so it was just like natural. I just started taking more hours there, and it escalated, and moved into really something that I became super passionate about over time, and just
Mhm.
helping people. And it was rewarding being able to make an impact on people and um, really have a positive impact on their life and change their life. So that's how I really got into it. What kept me there for a long time was I was also a competitive CrossFit athlete. So I at the time it was a good way to like blend, be able to train a lot and be able to like make a
Mhm.
living at the same time and just kind of be in the same place. I don't do that anymore, but I was a competitive cross athlete, so it kind of kept me there. And
Mhm.
I'm always someone who's just looking for improvements. Like I like education, I like learning things, and so I went down all these different paths of learning functional medicine and targeted supplementation strategies, and education around the gut microbiome and hormones and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then COVID hit, and that kind of sent me online a little bit. I had an online business before that, where I was coaching people online as well for just general fitness and nutrition. But COVID really like launched my full online business that we
Mhm.
operate with now.
Interesting. Yeah. And it seems like, COVID changed so many businesses, but as a client of yours, I do enjoy the services and the on demand, the messaging, all
Yeah,
of the tech platform to be able to log in and see the progress we're making. So I think the online experience is wonderful.
hmm
Um, so let's talk a little bit more about what a proactive data driven health really looks like in practice.
yeah,
What is the data that entrepreneurs or, people that are listening to this story saying like, hey, I feel like I can't lose weight, or I'm low energy, or in my case, I'm 40, I've got a business, I've got kids.
yeah,
I just know I need a little nudge. So, what does the proactive data driven health actually look
yeah,
like?
yeah. In 90% of our clients are business owners, and the other 10% are executives. So performance throughout in their life matters a lot, as it does for you. Like you want to be able to do the things you want to do, execute at a very high level, and feel amazing doing it. And a proactive, data-driven approach for those type of people matters a lot more. And so, the way I like to think about this is like if you had in your business, I'm sure that everyone has their KPIs by which they make decisions
Hmm.
based off, right? Their cost to acquire a client, or their lifetime value, or whatever data that they're using. They use those specific metrics to help them make decisions about what changes to make. And if they didn't have those, they would be overwhelmed, anxious, wouldn't be able to scale their business, right? And the data matters. Unfortunately, people don't have that for their health. For whatever reason, we just guess. Like, we, instead of getting the data first and then making decisions, we try peptides, we try a random supplement strategy, we try a random diet that we saw online that was working for a friend. And it's just not unique to your situation. And because of that, people end up on this cycle where they try something, it maybe doesn't work as well as they wanted to. They give up on it. It's frustrating. It's discouraging. They get in the dumps again, and then they see this new thing online and they try that thing. And so a proactive data-driven approach collects all the data that we need first to help you get your best estimate of what is going to work best for you based on your biology. And so that means collecting blood, stool, urine, saliva, everything, and getting a full measurement of your internal physiology. And then getting a measurement of what you're actually currently doing for nutrition and exercise and supplementation. What is your body fat percentage? What is our visceral fat? How much muscle do we have? What is your movement, flexibility, mobility like? If you can get these metrics in place, then you can really make the best decisions as to what would work best for you at a game plan level. So that's how I see proactive. And the proactive part is addressing issues before they become issues, right? Like in traditional medicine, things are very black and white. And so we have these reference ranges. If we use blood sugar, for example, or testosterone, we have these reference ranges where there's this huge normal reference range. And it's designed that way because it is essentially the way that reference ranges work and they're created is that they just take everyone who's been tested in that database, and the 95% of the middle become the normal reference range. The problem is, like, not most Americans aren't healthy. They're not what we're shooting for. And so if we are comparing ourselves to this normalized standard, we're just saying, like, we're average. And the guys we work with, the entrepreneurs, like, they're not average. They're in every other area of their life, but for some reason in their health, they're just settling for being average, right? And that's just the way that the traditional medical system is set up to flag for disease. It's not designed to be proactive, address potential issues that may come up in the future, and essentially help you optimize your health. People who are already doing well and want to be at their absolute best need a different way to go about it, right? And so that's where I see proactive coming into what we do. It's just we're addressing issues before they're going to become issues. And like an easy example of this is blood sugar. If we look at your blood sugar, we know that the optimal reference range is 75 to 85, but the normal reference range in traditional medicine goes up to 100.
Wow.
For every point that you're over 85, though, it increases your risk of type 2 diabetes by 6% over the next decade. So you could be 95, be completely normal from your doctor's perspective, and also at the same time be at a 60% increased risk of diabetes in the next 10 years. Wow. And to me, that's just, like, not acceptable.
Yeah.
So
and
that's just one example of many.
That is such a good insight too, right? If we're looking at good health being the average of our country, unfortunately, we live in a country that is generally unhealthy. So, putting yourself as average in that cohort is certainly suboptimal.
Yeah. It's not where we want to be. It's not going to support good executive function.
Exactly. So is there a specific health profile that you see repeatedly among, founders and entrepreneurs, or any common blind spots that they tend to share?
Yeah. There's definitely a health profile that we see. I would say if we're talking primarily from an internal health perspective, almost everyone I see is inflamed in some degree, whether that be happening in the gut or happening just systemically. Everyone's inflamed. And because a lot of the people, because we, work primarily with business owners, we see a lot of men, right? And like the men that we work with, oftentimes they're low testosterone and insulin resistant. I would say those are the three biggest things. And if I had to throw a fourth one in there, it would be a gut health concern that we have. And so I would say, the profile is like inflammation and gut issues, which then are causing insulin resistance and poor hormone function. And
sorry, and then what does that manifest? How do we see that as a person?
Yeah, and so that shows up for people having crashes in the afternoon, right? They have really low energy, feel like they're losing their edge or their drive. Sometimes memory and recall starts to kind of lapse, right? Maybe we're not as focused and productive as we used to be. It shows up in so many different ways. Obviously fat gain with insulin resistance and low testosterone as well. You see like midsection fat gain where, that didn't used to happen before. A little bit of resistance to body composition changes, even when you're putting in the effort. These are sort of general things that we see for people. I would say the main concerns that come across are just low energy, either no matter how well you slept, or low energy that happens like after meals / in the afternoon, right? That's probably the main thing. Changes from a body composition perspective, or lack of change from a body composition perspective. Those are really the main things that come up from that perspective. Yeah.
And so you pointed out a minute ago the standard of blood sugar. Is there any sort of one commonly held belief that you think medicine has that is just flat out wrong, or something that entrepreneurs and business owners should be thinking about?
Something that traditional medicine is flat out wrong with. I don't think that they're really wrong in what they're doing. I just think people are going to traditional medicine for solutions that traditional medicine isn't meant to solve. And so traditional medicine is phenomenal. I don't want this to be like a bash on traditional medicine. I think obviously, like in today's day and age, like doctors are doing crazy lifestyle like saving things. Like medicine is insane. The problem is people are going to traditional medicine for things like my energy is low, I'm having a hard time losing weight. And like traditional medicine is designed to stop people from dying. And so like when you go to them and you're like, I'm tired, they're like, I got a guy over here who's like having a heart attack. Like we don't have time for this, And so I think the if there's a belief, it's that people who are normal are just like fine and don't need to be considered, right? They kind of just be pushed off the edge.
If the car's running, it's fine. Even if the wheel's loose, even if the engine's making a sound, the car's still running. Modern medicine, green light, go.
Exactly. And I would add to the second thing of that is that when there is an issue, the first answer is always a medication. When they haven't asked you about their sleep, what they eat, if they're exercising, what they're doing from lifestyle habits and routines. And most chronic conditions that we as Americans experience and kill us today are preventable with those things. And so it's not that these medications are bad, and there's always a use case for them for some people. But from my perspective, other things should be tried first to correct problems.
Yeah, and those things that would be changing your diet, changing your habits, exercising more, and then again, the supplementation, making sure you understand what signs your body's showing you, and then giving it what it needs for those gaps. Yeah. And so when you think about, defining optimization versus just being healthy, right? Where does that line sit?
Yeah. So from my perspective, it's different from person to person, but from an optimization perspective, we have like our optimal reference ranges for all the things that are going on internally, of course. And so we're always shooting for those. We have our normal versus optimal ranges, right? Like what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, what is like critically deficient, and then what is optimal and elite. And so we, where that line sits for each individual metric in each individual part of your health is a little bit different. But the thing that I see the difference, how that manifests in a person is like, normal is just like going through your day to day and making it by, and optimization is like, I feel like I'm at my peak. I'm at peak cognitive performance. I'm crushing it in my life. My relationships are great. Business is doing well. I feel like I can perform the activities that I wanted to do, not just like get by doing them, but like actually do them very well at a high level. And so really, I think it depends a little bit on people's perspective and what they want to do with their life, which is why this is like a personalized approach. Someone may want to play golf at a very high level or whatever it is that they want to do. And someone else might just want to be able to hang out with their family, and those require a different level of optimization, right? So like it's optimizing and tailoring that based on your goals will help us understand like where that line is for each person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of your experience as an entrepreneur building this business. So, I guess we talked a little bit about the migration from the lab to the gym. You were coaching there a little bit, and then obviously COVID happened. So, at what point did you realize that you were building a true business? Was there any sort of, situation where you woke up one day and you realized, hey, I'm going to make a business out of this?
Yeah, well, I had 3 failed businesses before this one. So,
Okay.
and they were all in the coaching space. One was online, in person. So eh, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, just
Hmm.
deep down, and I never had the guts to do it really until COVID forced me to be honest. Like I never had the guts to go full in and take the
Hmm.
risk until COVID really like forced that upon me. Um, so when did I know that this was going to be a real business was when I hired a mentor and paid a lot of money to have someone help me build it. Um, and that was money I did not have. So that was when I like really fully immersed myself into committing to this because I didn't have another option. Right. It was back
Hmm.
to the wall kind of deal.
Yep. Yep. Burn the boats. Just
Yeah,
move
that's it.
forward.
That was all
Very
in.
cool. Um, and so that's a great segue there. So you talk about a mentor, as you're building Second Prime and you're experiencing growth now, what has that experience taught you about, having the right advisors, having the right people in your corner? How have those people helped you grow? And how would you describe, the role that
Yeah.
they've played in your success so far?
Yeah, I think I have good advisors in certain areas and not such good advisors in other areas. Like my business from a business perspective, I feel like I do have some good people on our team. I have some really good people on our team and mentors that we work with that have helped me through business struggles, hiring, procedures, things like that. That have really made a incredibly positive impact on our business. Um, One thing that I've struggled with a lot is like now that we're actually experiencing growth and there's profit in the business, which was not the case for a long time. Like, what do I actually do with that? And I don't think I have good answers for that at this point. Like, tax strategies to mitigate how much I'm gonna have to pay at the end of the year.
Hmm.
Like how much I should actually be paying myself versus taking it in. We switched to an S corp this year. It's been a freaking disaster. So like, it's not even done
Hmm.
yet, and so I don't know that I have good answers for that.
Hmm.
But I do now see that I'm growing how valuable it would be to have someone on our team that could help us understand more about what to do with that money. So I'm not just giving it all back to Uncle Sam,
Hmm.
or and obviously at the end of the year that causing huge problems from a cash flow perspective. Um, so yeah, I'm we're in the process of learning a lot more about that.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's so common, right? Because the business owners we work with, folks like you and other entrepreneurs who are really hitting that, what we call the go growth stage, the things that got you there, the hard work, the sacrifices. Now it's time to really think about being intentional with the profits and intentional with the cash. So like you said, right, making the change to an S corp is a great thing for businesses when they reach certain levels. It unlocks a plethora of tax planning opportunities. It allows you to take advantage of some significant opportunities. And then, to your point, right, if you put everything into tax deferment, like through 401k, solo 401k, cash balance plan, if you do all of that, then you might not have enough cash left over for actually operating the business and doing the things you need to do, and handling any surprises that tend to come up with businesses. So having a really intentional approach, what we call the liquidity buckets or the balance sheet strategy, is really critical for entrepreneurs to make sure that you're balancing, right? How do we harvest what we need from the business to support ourselves, to support our family, to do our financial stuff, but also, how do we plan for the future and how do we mitigate taxes?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a great point. Um, so, when you think about where the business is today, you know, what are some milestones that have occurred, along the path where you've realized that friction? Obviously, we talked the other day about the S corp and
Yeah.
kind of that pain point, but any other challenges where you've kind of looked around and said, hey, maybe I need a different business coach, or maybe I need to do something different? Have there been
Yeah.
other milestones like that?
Yeah. Um, Well, the first one was just like actually hiring a business coach because I had like
Hmm.
cheap mentors in the beginning,
Hmm.
and you pay for what you get. I'm very aware of that. Um, but I would say the second one is like we really hadn't had enough profit up until last year to for this to be a problem because I was just paying myself whatever was left over and it was like enough for us.
Hmm.
We were doing well, but it was just like enough to pay me. There wasn't extra, right? And
Hmm.
now that there's extra in the business, I would say that the next problem that we're having is like our financial advisors are not very involved. Like like we maybe get an update from them quarterly. It's like a once a year kind of like, meeting with them, but we don't know what to do with this extra money in our bank account. Should we be putting it in investments? The investments that they're doing with us aren't very good. Like we don't know what to do with it. How much should I be putting into a 401k? I don't have answers for any of that. Like how much I should be saving for my daughter. We have an 18-month-old, another on the way. Like what should we be doing planning for that? We don't have any of it in place that I feel like is at the level of what I would expect now. And it was just like so far down the problem list before. Like there are so many other problems and fires to put out that now that those are put out, they're kind of surfacing, and I'm realizing that I need better support in that area of my life and my business.
Yeah. And again, going back to our conversation the other day when we were talking about this, and then also the challenge with what's going on with the S Corp, if those advisors aren't talking to each other, right, there's also natural gaps that are happening where, your advisor's doing one thing and your tax people are doing another, but then your life plan is doing something totally different. As an entrepreneur, right, you're so busy putting out fires. You want to spend time with your daughter, with your family. So it really does benefit having the right people in your corner, making sure that they understand the mission. They're communicating with all the other people, going back to an athletics conversation, right? For the folks that we work with, the client you are the coach. You're the one calling the plays. Our team is the quarterback. We're on the field. We're making sure the ball gets to where it needs to go. We're making sure blocking and tackling is happening the correct way so that everything is moving forward towards the client's goals. And for an entrepreneur, having that, we found has been a tremendous resource and tremendous support. So, switching, let's leave the audience with some practical takeaways here, right? We've been talking about health. We've been talking about kind of what you do with your work. So, if a busy entrepreneur is listening to this thinking, maybe I'm having some energy issues every afternoon, I'm crashing and I'm just exhausted, can't finish the day, or don't have energy when the kids get home from school. What are some changes, it could also be weight loss, what are some changes one change that you think would be good for entrepreneurs to think about trying to implement in their life?
Yeah. I think for entrepreneurs, the biggest thing is becoming efficient. And the reason being is like, we just don't have time to waste. We have so many other things going on, and you just don't have time to try random things. And so from my perspective, it's like, if there's one thing, it's get way more targeted in your approach so that you're actually doing something that corrects a problem, right? And that would be one thing. Obviously, that requires data, and you can't go do that today. So I don't want to leave them with that. But I do think that's probably like the number one thing that someone can do is go find someone to get the data they need to help them make better decisions so that they're not trying all this random stuff. They're very efficient with their game plan, and they can get more out of less, or they can get more results from less time, effort, and sacrifice, really, which is really all that we're looking for, right? I would say the second thing would be focused around nutrition. Like if there's one thing to that will make the biggest difference in your physiology, is what you actually put into it. And so nutritionally, I mean, everyone talks about the basics: get enough protein, don't overconsume calories, eat enough fiber. Like those things are all super important. I would say find an approach that works for you, and that's gonna be different for everybody, that works for your schedule, that works for your preferences, that that you can consistently implement. That's the main thing. And if it has an element of helping you get enough protein, helping you, eat enough fiber, whatever it might be, great. But the main important thing is that you eat foods that are generally considered healthy. They're whole single ingredient foods on a regular basis. And you find a way to do that doesn't cause overwhelm and take a ton of time and effort and sacrifice for you to prep all this food and manage all this plan, right? You don't want that. You want something that's simple and easy. So I would say like nutrition would be the number one thing to focus on, aside from getting the data you need to make better decisions.
Yep. And I realize this question could probably be a whole episode in itself, but you talked at the beginning about how traditional medicine's response is just take this medication. So I went to my annual physical last year, and I'm 40, a little overweight. And I was talking to the doctor, like, hey, I want to lose weight. I'm 40. I want to get in shape. I want to get back to being fit. And their response was, just take Zepbound. Just get on a GLP-1. And obviously we've talked about it, and that's not my initial approach. I'd like to fix the foundation, fix the habits. And then if it's, if at that point, then I plan to do that stuff. But, what would you tell the audience, to help them cut through the noise about kind of all the biohacking supplement world, maybe, a couple words about GLP-1s and how we should think about those, because the way it was presented by the doctor was like, you don't need to change your diet. You don't need to work out. Just take this magic pill. And I frankly just find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that first just because it's top of mind. But to me, it's just an absolutely ridiculous approach. We know, and by the way, I am also, before I get into this, let's preface this, that I love peptides, TRT and HRT for women and men who need it, the GLP-1s. But from my perspective, the way that traditional medicine doing it is all wrong. And for example, someone goes to they go to their doctor, they're overweight, their doctor prescribed a GLP-1. There's a pre-ramping of that dose to people where they're going to start on 2.5 milligrams and after 4 weeks go to 5 and then 7.5 and 12. And you haven't had a consultation with a doctor between any of that. And it's just a pre-escalation when the minimum effective dose might have been 2.5. And so all the nightmare stories you hear of people having problems with these things, from the peptides, from poor oversight with TRT, it's poor oversight. It's not using minimal effective doses and just like way too high of dosing schedules for people. From a traditional medicine perspective, there's a whole host of other issues as it relates to peptides and GLP-1s, from sourcing to people stacking them inappropriately to having poor procedures around injection. And people just don't have guidance on that. They're just like given a prescription and then hope for the best, right? And in addition to that, we know that there's a paper that came out, it was a couple weeks ago at this point, and they showed that people on GLP-1s lost a ton of weight, more weight than people on a lifestyle protocol. Like lifestyle would be nutrition and exercise. But then over 2 years, they actually gained back all of that weight, where the lifestyle people lost significantly less, but then were able to maintain it better. And the takeaway from that is not that GLP-1s are bad. It's that you need both. You need them in combination. Honestly, I shouldn't say you need both. If you're going to do GLP-1s, you still need the lifestyle piece of it, because that's what's going to help you maintain your weight. You can't just, knock out your hunger cues and then think that it's going to come back when you stop, or not going to come back when you stop, right? And so all the lifestyle things set the foundation, and then you can use these tools for optimization afterward. But you've got to set the foundation first, right? So, yeah, and then I think the same thing goes for TRT. People jump on TRT way too soon most of the time for men. And a lot of times if men are overweight and on TRT, they're actually not able to utilize it well for a host of reasons that we don't have to discuss today. But yeah, there's a lot of problems with the way that it's traditionally done in traditional medicine from my perspective.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So, with that, we're coming to the end here. Where can people find you online if they want to learn more? What's the best way for folks to engage with content or get to know you?
Yeah, most of our content is on Instagram. So it's at Andrew Martin Health on Instagram. We are building out the LinkedIn. We're getting on there soon. So there's not really much content on there, but I do have a profile set up. And then our website is under construction too. So that will be secondprime.io once it launches here in the next few weeks. Relaunches, I should say, because we just rebranded.
Yeah, no, excellent stuff. This is a great conversation, and it's funny because when Taylor sent me the show notes, he said, in a sense, I've got a biologist on who's a coach, and I thought, well, where are we going to go with this one? And it's a fascinating discussion, Andrew. Thank you for taking the time to share it with us and share how people can reach out and get in touch with you. It's great. And Taylor,
thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, and Taylor, as far as you're concerned, people listening to this are thinking you might be somebody that they might want to reach out to and at least initially have a conversation with. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so, like Andrew's approach, right, I'd suggest taking a proactive data-driven approach. So, take the quiz. It's called the Strategic Wealth Scorecard, and that's about a 3-minute quiz, and it's going to give you immediate feedback about how your wealth strategy is aligned with your personal vision. It's going to touch on taxes, strategy. It's going to talk about your advisory group. So it's going to point to kind of all those big subjects that Andrew and I were just talking about and give you a score with some immediate feedback of, hey, here's some actions you can take. And then through that, there's plenty of opportunities to hop on my calendar and we can talk about whichever area you need to.
And where do they find that quiz?
The link is in the show notes, and you can also find me on LinkedIn at Taylor Nissi, and the link is there as well.
Excellent. And if you're curious, reach out to him. And I underscore this all the time. Having an initial conversation with Taylor does not commit you to anything, doesn't mean that you are now going to have to do something with him. It gives you an idea whether you would like to work with him or not, whether he's the guy, the advisor for you. So do that. The other thing you can do that costs you nothing is simply hit the follow button. If you're not a subscriber, hit that follow button. That way, every time a new episode drops, you'll be notified. You can give that one a listen and continue along this journey with Taylor. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Taylor, everybody behind the scenes at the Pleasant Street Podcast, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Pleasant Street Pod. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss a new episode. To learn more, visit pleasantstreetwealth.com or give us a call at 518-363-9363. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect those of Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors, LLC or Farther Finance Advisors, LLC. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional investing advice. Always consult your financial advisor or another qualified provider with questions about your investment planning.